So what an honor and privilege it is to be here. Thank you all for coming in. I know you had lawns to mow and pools to sit by. But I'm going to tell you the story. Everybody knows about Rosie the Riveter. Nobody knew about Laura the Luthier until I discovered her. Or maybe she discovered me. We'll figure this out. But first, I have a quiz. So, these two guitars were built by women in World War II. Only two documented of the gal-made guitars that went to the war and came back. One, a sailor took to the Pacific. The other, a foot soldier took to Europe. Now, which one you think spent its early days in foxholes? This one or this one? Let's. Who votes for this one? Okay, who votes for this one? Yeah, it was this one. It's battered and beaten. Let me tell you a little bit about the guitars first, and then I'll tell you the story. So, I have to stay over there because they won't film me anywhere else. So the one on the left there, on your left, is the second guitar the women ever made from the first batch, shipped in August 1942. I know, I wish I knew where the first one is, but I don't know. So it's the oldest one known. A beautiful guitar came to me a couple years ago. Spent a year in the hands of Jennifer Nettles of Sugarland and other music fame, and some trouble getting it back from her anyway. This one on the right, the young man bought in December 1943 in New York City and took it to Europe. It's called a Southerner Jumbo, and named Southerner Jumbo because, at least the myth goes, the Gibson company thought people living south of the Mason-Dixon line needed a gussied up guitar, so it's got some parallelograms and such. But here's the story on that. I got access to Gibson's shipping ledgers, and I tried to find this guitar. And from about October 1943 into February 1944, there were only 3 of this model shipped to any music store in New York area, New York metropolitan area. All to the same store, all there at one time. Now, I don't have PowerPoint or film, so I bought visual aids. I also have a mimeograph machine. I'm gonna do some dittos for you when you're done, okay? So here's a fun book. It's called Woody, Cisco and Me. Cisco Houston, the actor and musician, Woody Guthrie, and Jim Longy, the me, joined them in the Merchant Marines. And he talks in the book about Woody buying a new guitar, December 1943. He and Cisco Houston walked into a guitar on 6th Avenue in New York City, then called New York Band, and bought 2 of those 3 Southern Jumbos. Almost certainly, this was the other one hanging on the wall. Now that guitar that Woody bought, probably most of you know the famous photograph of Woody with a sticker on it that says, "This machine kills fascists." Woody was known for only having one guitar at a time. He either lost it or gave it away. He bought that guitar December 8th, that's when it arrived at the shop in New York City. And this picture, that photograph of him, was taken in the fall of '44 when he was on the campaign trail with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. There's another Roosevelt tie-in here. He also recorded, he only had one guitar, he wrote and recorded a number of songs for the first recording session he did, called the Moash, for Morris Ash, Moash recording sessions in New York City, in Manhattan, in which he recorded This Land Is Your Land. So it is almost certain this guitar is hanging on the shop when Woody and Cisco walk in. Or my guy could have gotten it before Woody and Cisco got there. There are only 2 left. I don't know, because Jim Longy didn't get one. And that's the litter mate of the song that Woody Guthrie used to write and record This Land Is Your Land. Now, I'm also going to tell you at some point, one of these guitars bears the fingerprints, not literal, but the symbolic fingerprints of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But let me tell you first how I got the name for this book. So, we all know December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor. December 8th, 1941, we declare war. Women walk into the Gibson factory, tell that story in a minute, early 1942. #1 song on the hit parade. United States of America at the time. Glenn Miller's I've Got a Gal in Kalamazoo. So I have these women in Kalamazoo, Michigan, walking into that factory to build guitars at the same moment that their namesake was being memorialized by Glenn Miller and this song. Anybody who reads music, how many guitar players here? Because none of them read music. Anybody play piano? Right? How do you stop a guitar player from playing? Put music in front of him or her. Anyway, this is sheet music. So how did this happen? What the hell's going on here, right? This is my reason. People ask me, well, how did you write this book? Why did you write this book? What was your motivating force? Well, I'm a recovering lawyer. It's like being an alcoholic, right? And a law professor. And what's the most prominent emotional feeling you have all day, Mr. McCann? Boredom. Nothing more boring than being a practicing lawyer. So I got bored. And I was writing stuff for what I call the self-contained body of literature, the academic literature. The only people who read that stuff are the people who write it. And I started trying to find my own voice. But if you try to have your own voice in academic literature, they'll either edit we're all adults here, shit out of it, or they'll reject you. So I started writing for music magazines, freelance. Initially, I gave them away. Eventually, apparently with me, at least in writing in person, this isn't true, but in my writing, familiarity does not breed contempt. And so I got a bunch of commissions. And somewhere along the way, I came across this photograph, which you can't see in the recording. I can hold it over here. This is my Vanna White. Here we go. And so I don't recall whether I photocopied it or printed it from the internet. This would be 2006-ish, 5-ish, 6-ish, 7-ish. I think Al Gore had invented the internet by then, right? I think so. I don't know. Someone Google while we're doing this. Get bored, Google, right? And I couldn't figure out what all these people, women, were doing in front of that factory in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Now, at the time, I didn't know when it was taken. I don't know much about dress. I know nothing about hairdos, right? So what the hell, how did I know? I guess 30s, 40s, 50s. I later got an original print. This is a scan of that print, taken June 1944. So I'm wondering, what are a bunch of women doing in front of a guitar factory in 1944? I didn't know the date yet. The date will come shortly. In Kalamazoo, Michigan. Because Gibson was not doing any guitar work. So, one of my favorite publications called The Gibson Story. A little sticker on the front. Got overactive with my Post-its. I didn't know Post-its still existed, but I found one in my house. And this book was written by a fellow named Julius Belson. Julius Belson was the personnel director at the Gibson Company from 1938 to about 1947. So he hired everybody in that picture. And Julius wrote, Gibson did not build any guitars or musical instruments of any kind during World War II. Gibson built guitars, mandolins, some violins, basses. Again, we've already established everybody's an adult, I can say this, and banjos. Hey, Daryl, how long does it take to tune a banjo? Nobody knows. Dad jokes come fast and thick here, right? Had a friend once that had a banjo gig in New York City, played at the City Winery, beautiful place. He had one of these master tone banjos from 1930s, which were worth about $100,000 at least, if it's all original. So he played a gig at the City Winery, didn't pay him enough. So he bought a drink afterwards, put his banjo in his car and left and went out, got a drink with some buddies. Forgot to lock his car. When he got back, 5 more banjos in his car. So, it's only because I can't play the banjo. So the official company story, they didn't build any musical instruments during the war. which made some sense because Gibson, I have a little thing here, I have all my visual aids. Gibson received 3 E for Excellence awards. I've got an original painting somewhere for serving the military. Gibson was early into electronics, had some electric guitars and amplifiers in the late 1930s. So Gibson could do radar and radio. Gibson had woodworking skills, so Gibson could build pontoons for amphibious aircraft. Gibson also had could build the struts inside airplane wings, that sort of thing. So it made some sense that Gibson didn't build any instruments during the war. It was building wartime projects. In fact, Gibson actually pounded plowshares into swords, right? The other way around, right? One of the components of a guitar, which was eliminated according to an order that FDR issued in March of 1943, it became effective June 1st of 1943, took metal parts out of the guitars, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And one of the components was a reinforcement rod in the neck, which turned out to be the perfect size for some component of a 50 caliber machine gun. So, you know, it makes some sense. But there was a parallel story. And you can tell that I'm both a certified and certifiable guitar geek. This is a book about Gibson guitars, and I thumbed through it often enough that the cover fell off. This book published in the mid-1980s. The author said, oh no, Gibson built some guitars during World War II. And they were great, because 90% of the workforce went to the war. And those who remained, the 10%, were seasoned craftsmen. And these are fantastic guitars. So we have these two stories. And I'm thinking, seasoned craftsmen? What were the women doing? Well, they probably were doing some wartime work. So I just fixated on this photograph, kept thinking about it. And my lovely life partner and wife, Dorothy up here in front, said to me at one point, you're going to have to try to find one of those women. So, not having a real job, being a law professor, I had a lot of spare time. Now, a law professor is I'm a full-time professor, and I have to teach 6 credits a semester. That's 6 hours in the classroom. Now, before you feel sorry for me, those are 50-minute hours, so it's 5 hours of work a week, right? Unbelievable. So I had plenty of time, right? So I decide I'm going to try to find one of these women. I don't know, how do you find them? 70 years later? So I'm hoping this is a slice of the demographic that didn't move much, right? If we found young people today, these people are in their teens and 20s, take a photograph of young people in Hyde Park, there are a couple left, right? And then come back 70 years later, none of them are going to be here, right? They're going to be all over the world. But I'm hoping these people didn't move. So I call up the Kalamazoo Gazette, and I ask, what is the best day for circulation? Wednesdays. Why Wednesdays? Food coupons. Remember food coupons? So I take out an advertisement in the Kalamazoo Gazette and the newspapers of all the contiguous towns. This is back long enough ago to be 2007-ish, where every town had an in-print local newspaper. And I wrote, a guy from the East Coast, I didn't tell him how far east, if he was from Connecticut, they might not show up. And I'm going to come to town, and I'll be here at this particular time, this week. And if you worked for Gibson during World War II, or know somebody who worked for Gibson during World War II, I'd like to talk to you. Because this is not going to work. I got contacted by 12 of those women. Now, the women actually didn't contact me. But only women contacted me. Either their daughters or more often their granddaughters. My grandma worked at Gibson during World War II. I don't know whether she'll come talk to you, but I'd like her to. So I flew to Kalamazoo, got no book advance, no contract. I had no idea what I'm doing here. Fly to Kalamazoo, and the women broke into 2 groups. Some of them gave me their addresses. This is back when I had MapQuest. Printing out MapQuest, I'm driving along, find them. But then there are the others, the more seasoned, smarter people. They only agreed to meet me in a well-lit public place. And so I came up with this idea. I would have a Sunday afternoon tea, because I thought maybe 40s, maybe that's what people were used to. So in a beautiful bed and breakfast, I had a Sunday afternoon tea, but I met several of the women in their houses. I fly out to Kalamazoo, get my MapQuest out, drive, and you can come up and look at this photograph later, and I'll bring it out to the book signing. And only if you buy a book will I show you that. No. And you can see about, I don't know, fourth or fifth from the right, there's somebody sitting there with a flower in her hair. The first house I pull up to, I drive up, I can still hear the gravel under the tires. Reminds me of a Lucinda Williams song. But anyway, I can still hear the car wheels on a gravel road. And I stop, turn the car off, and I'm sitting there thinking, what am I doing? I got no idea, right? What am I going to say? So I sit there, catch my breath, stand out, and there is Jenny Snow. She's opened up, come out the door, the screen door. She's leaning against her house, and she says, I thought you'd never get out of that car. And so I walk in, and it turns out this is the easiest set of interviews I've ever done. And I had been still a recovering lawyer. I remember depositions like pulling teeth or pulling hair follicles. And all I had to ask people was, tell me your first memories. People born during the Depression, lived through World War II. When did you work at Gibson? Where were you December 7, 1941? How long did you work at Gibson? Played out. Two things about Jenny's visit, well, three, two are related, come to mind. The first is that, she says to me, it was just a job. One of the other gals called it a crummy job, to this day calls it a crummy job. I don't know why you care. I don't think anybody ever cared. But she had brought out a box, a treasure trove of memorabilia, newspaper clippings, wire cutters, strings, some other sundry tools sitting on her desk, her table, kitchen table. It was as though she thought maybe someday somebody will care. And I'm looking at this stuff and thinking, did Gibson know you were taking this stuff out? And she catches what I'm thinking. And so she says, yeah, that was my husband. He told me part of my duty was to appropriate from my employer. He worked for the telephone company, AT&T. She showed me into her garage. You ever want a 1940s or 50s telephone? The garage was stacked to the ceiling with these old telephones. The second thing that came to mind is I walk in and Jenny actually coiled strings. So the strings were in a box, and in the box, each string was in a cellophane envelope, coiled up. So Jenny sits down, she pulls out one of the strings, springs out, she coils it back, sticks it back in there, blink of an eye. She says, now you try it, Sonny. And, I have coiled a lot of strings, right? You change your guitar strings, you coil them up, you either throw them in the recycling bin, or these days I give them to charities. Oftentimes they make jewelry with them. I've never seen anybody wearing any, but anyway. So of course I do my best, of course not nearly as fast as Jenny, and we sort of bonded. These women, many of them, half of them were still in the houses they lived in during World War II. The question I asked Jenny, where were you December 7, 1941? She points out the window. I was walking out there. We were coming home, my friend and I, from Sunday school. It was a Sunday afternoon. People were shouting out the window, we're going to war, we're going to war. Pearl Harbor's been bombed. And we all wondered, what the heck is Pearl Harbor? So I get this window into the world. As I go around and I start to talk to these women. Let me tell you a little bit about the women. The youngest I met was 84 years old then. The first interviews were 2007, 2008. It took me 5 years to put this story together. The book's been out for a while. It's taken me around the world, and now there's a film out about it. It was just this stunning thing, right? I get this window into this world. The women are old. The youngest is 84 years old. She is still alive today. She turned 203, January 30th. I said 103. I exaggerate everything. Don't read the book. Right. She turned 103, January 3rd. She's still alive. The oldest was about 96, 97. And she lived to be a couple days short of her 103rd birthday. I don't know what they're drinking in Kalamazoo, but I need some. Now, it's got to be water that's different from Flint, Michigan, just down the road, right? Right? And I get this amazing thing. Let me tell you, just before I get one little digression. I went to celebrate, his name was Irene, the 103-year-old's birthday, January 30th in Kalamazoo this past January. And I do a little radio promo ahead of time for the local NPR station. the day before it airs. And then the morning of the event, we're having a birthday party for the 103-year-old, I get a phone call, or an email from a young woman whose grandmother worked at Gibson, who was 104. I got to interview her. She died about 3 weeks ago, just a few days short of her 105th birthday. So anyway, I get this window into the world. It's such an interesting time. They're building guitars, and the company is covering it up. So all of the advertisements of the day mimicked that statement by the personnel director who became a historian and wrote that book. We're not building any instruments. We are waiting for the boys to come home. And then I've got at least some evidence from this other book that some of the seasoned craftsmen built some really good guitars. But I get a chance to ask these women, did you build guitars? My second witness, I drive to the next house. On the way, the woman calls me up and she says to me, I don't want to talk to you. And I say, well, I'm not going to talk to you. Well, I'm not going to talk to you. So I came all the way from Connecticut. Can I just come up to your door and shake your hand? She says, okay. I heard, my real call, I should have been a Fuller Brush salesman. Because I get there, literally, she opens the door, sticks her hand out, and shakes it. And I say, I came all this way. Will you come in? She went, oh, okay. And she had a post-it. She had written the dates. When I was born, when I worked for Gibson, when I started, when I stopped, when I got married, when my kids were born, when my husband died. That was it. She had to do it. I got nothing else to say. When did you work at Gibson? I started in 1943, worked to mid-1944. Okay. What was your job? No, I was a guitar inspector. What? Guitar inspector. So you made guitars? Oh, yeah, we were making guitars. How many? I don't know. I say, remind me again when you worked? And so I have 6 of these guitars. I had another one of these guitars. It looks like it's brand new, but I don't know that it went to World War II. I said, got something in the car you've seen before. Went out, got my guitar re-inspected. The only World War II era Gibson to have passed inspection twice. Now, anybody here have a Gibson guitar? So you know, no Gibson guitars ever failed its inspection, right? So I asked her, what was your training? No training. What were you looking for? I don't know. She didn't know how to play. She said, I would look for like little dots or imperfections in the wood. And what happened? I would put it in this one rack, and then those were the rejects, and I would put the other ones in the rack to sell. And so what happened? Well, at the end of the day, my boss would come in, pick up the ones in the reject rack and say, oh, that went fine, put it in the one to ship out. So now I've got this story. At that time, 3 of the 12 women I met built guitars. The 104-year-old I met also built guitars, but 3 out of the 12, about a fourth of them. That's probably a pretty good sample of that population, probably. I claim I have a jigsaw puzzle. I've got about about a third of the pieces. I don't exactly know what went on, other than this small sample of women. But I don't know, well, how many guitars was it? Just a few? This woman's name was Valura, V-L-U-R-A. I love that, never heard it before, love Valura. She could remember a few guitars, she wasn't sure. So I wanted to find out from Gibson. Gibson moved in mid-1980s from from Kalamazoo to Nashville, Tennessee, ostensibly to be nearer the music industry, but really to break a union contract. Went to a right-to-work state in Tennessee, left the building behind. And there had been rumors of shipping ledgers, right? That somehow somebody had written down where the guitars went. I met that woman who wrote all those entries in the shipping ledgers. That's how I figured out where Woody Guthrie bought his guitar. But at this point in time, my story, I don't know where that is. So I tried everything I can at Gibson. I start with customer support. You got a Gibson guitar, there's no customer support there. I wouldn't be saying this thing, but over the years, Gibson threatened to sue me twice for violating their intellectual property rights. The current administration has been nicer. Both times I said, I'm a recovering lawyer, I haven't tried a case in a while. Just let me know when and where. This will be the greatest promotion I'll ever get. And both times they said, never mind. Anyway, so I start with customer service. I work my way up to the CEO's office. And the administrative assistant says, look, we don't have any shipping records. But if we had, we wouldn't show them to you. We're a privately held company. You have no rights to this. And so I've just about given up. But a publisher of a music magazine I'm working for said, I know this nice person in Gibson. I used not to reveal the person's gender, but it's a guy. He's since retired. Because Gibson threatened to sue me unless I told him who let me in the building. And he says, email this guy, see what happens. So I email him, and the guy says to me, he's vice president. There's several vice presidents there. He said, I don't think we have any shipping ledgers. But look, within 20 minutes, I get this email from him. I'm sitting here with an old crumbling leather book, and it says here in 1939, on this particular day, we shipped a guitar to Les Paul. We've got a whole stack of these. You can see them whenever you want. 2 days later, I was in Nashville. Now, the day I got that tray of those email messages, I was in Manhattan at the Woody Guthrie Archives. It's now a Woody Guthrie Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Fantastic place. Highly recommended. What a really interesting figure Woody was. Anyway, in the Woody Guthrie Center Archives in New York City, I was able to look at I'm looking for photographs to see whether Woody had one of these guitars. I didn't know whether the guitars existed. And of course, it's an archive, so I got to put on the white cotton gloves and carefully deal with stuff because the acids and our finger oils on our skin can damage paper, and you don't want to do that to archive quality, important historical documents. Looking through this, Arlo told me this story. I couldn't find any of the toilet tissue, but here's this toilet tissue story. Arlo Whitty's son told me, Woody wrote all the time. And we ran out of paper, he would start writing on toilet tissue. And he would turn it over and write on the other side. So I highly recommend that you go to the Woody Guthrie Center in Tulsa, but bring your own toilet paper. So the next day, I fly to Kalamazoo, I'm flying to Nashville, I get welcomed into this building. I'm told that if the CEO comes in, don't come out, give me an office, don't come outside. CEO did come down. At one point, again, we're all adults, I can use this language. I'm told if the CEO shows up, just stay in this office and close the door. And I'm busying with these records, which I'll tell you about in a moment. And somebody comes running down the hallway shouting, the fucking asshole is here. That's what they called him. That's what he was. They didn't say Mr. Juskowitz, whatever, that was what they called him. And everybody looked really busy for about half an hour. Anyway, so I go down and I'm walking, I go to the second floor, I'm walking along with this vice president, and he opens the door to the closet with cleaning supplies. You know, all the caustic bleaches, all those nasty chemicals. And on the floor in a pile are these leather-clad volumes, crumbling, just sitting there. So I gather up, the earliest one they have is 1936. I go to 1947, I think, so I can make sure I can cover the war era. But I want to get the early ones I can. Now, electric guitar players. What's the year I should have looked for? 1959. Gibson Les Paul, early Sunburst model, 1959, worth back up to about $500,000, right? Thereabouts. I didn't look for that volume. A couple of years later, it was revealed that that volume disappeared. I swear I didn't take it. Anyway, I start to note the guitars. I'm looking through, I'm not closing the door from the CEO. And there are just lots of musical instruments. So I start taking photographs. I take photographs of 4,400 pages. And then I do what any certifiable guitar geek would do. I count the guitars. So I counted these Banner Gibsons. I call it Banner Gibson. I'll tell you in a minute why it's a Banner Gibson. These flat tops with the round hole. About 9,100. Total musical instruments, just short of 25,000 instruments shipped during the war. That's a long way from Seasoned Craftsman made a few, and the official company story, we didn't build any musical instruments. It's a long way. So I now know a lot of instruments are built. I've identified some people who built them. I've got this mystery. Why did Gibson cover this up? Now, initially we might think, I thought, well, frivolous object during the war, maybe companies just didn't build these or covered it up. Gibson didn't want anybody to know they were building guitars. No. Martin Guitar Company, Gretsch Guitar Company, big manufacturer at the time, just kept manufacturing guitars, didn't cover it up. Well, I thought maybe Gibson violated some of the regulations that FDR had instituted. So here I'm going to go back to these two guitars. Well, I'll point them off screen. So, so both of them have a little banner-shaped decal on the headstock, place where the tuners are at the top. It says only a Gibson is good enough. One of them has what we call a truss rod cover, a couple screws that are hiding a hole where there's a metal truss rod. So this one, you look at it earlier, and I really want you to hold it and play it. I'll mention that in a minute. This one doesn't have that. So at the start of World War II, thank you, Daryl. This is Daryl, my comely assistant. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I got 5 minutes. So it's in January. So we declare war December 8, 1941. January 16, 1942, Franklin Delano Roosevelt establishes what's known as the War Production Board. A federal agency takes over the economy, wants to maintain, use critical materials for the war effort, closes down Singer's sewing machine. We don't need any new clothes right now. We're in the sewing machines. Closes Steinway piano because the soundboard is a big chunk of metal. Regulates clothing. Right? No poodle skirts, no zoot suits. Literally true. We're going to save, an inch on each side of the collar. And guitars can only have 10% weight in metals. So there was this truss rod in the middle. And I'm going to end with how I know these truss rods. You can see this bar down the middle. It's a metal rod. It disappeared for about a year because of that War Production Board. So I've solved the mystery, almost. Two things to mention to you. One is, why did Gibson cover this up? First, I thought maybe they produced too many guitars. No. Gibson not only didn't produce too many guitars, I have from the War Production Board records in the archives, Gibson's CEO, Guy Hart, complaining to the War Production Board that his company, it's a quote, was being run almost totally by women and it couldn't keep up with demand for guitars from soldiers. So it's not a secret, but Gibson's advertising of the day says we're going to wait till the boys come home. And when the war ends, Gibson sends out advertisements again. Now that the boys are back, we're making guitars again, and they're better than ever. The only explanation is that Gibson didn't think the buying public, almost all men, of course, would buy women-made guitars. Now, I'm going to end with this and take questions. You should buy one of these. Not mine, they aren't for sale. I'm 70 and I've got some health issues, so maybe I'll last another 5 years or so. Look for them on eBay. My son's promised they'll be up before my body's cold. My own wife doesn't even laugh at my jokes. You see that? You know. So once I've solved this mystery and I've got this distinguishing feature, this little banner, if it has that little golden decal on the top, I know women made it during World War II. So I send out the message to the guitar community, who are just incredibly giving. I would like about 3 dozen guitars. A dozen before the war, a dozen after the war, a dozen during the war. I've already got a half a dozen during the war, so I'm halfway there, right? I get guitars sent from around the world. No one even asked, not when they would get it back, whether they would get it back. I think I sent most of them back. And so I did this study, and I have a joint appointment at a medical school. I also have a fake medical degree, a public health degree. And I called up our diagnostic imaging faculty and said, I'd like to x-ray and CT scan some stuff. What? Well, what? Guitars. Oh, that's cool. They're just tired of x-raying bodies, right? And we actually proved beyond reasonable doubt, without question, that orthopedic surgeons would much rather look at pictures of guitars than these, because we published stuff in one of the orthopedic diagnostic imaging journals, and we got an online companion piece. We got so many questions and comments on these x-rays. So these are the actual x-ray film, because I wanted to do it the old-fashioned way, but we had digital stuff. And with the CT scans, I could create, but the diagnostic imaging people can create these three-dimensional models and spin them around. And my job was to say, wow, that's all I did, right? Once in a while I said, would you like sugar with your coffee? We could test everything, measure everything to the 1/10,000th of whatever you want. Millimeter, degree, what have you. And the women's work was statistically significantly more refined. When I say more refined, everything's a little smoother, a little thinner. Does that make them better? I think it does, but it makes them different. And then I'll end with this. I asked these women, what kind of training did you get? And they said to me, what do you mean by training? I said, well, did someone show you how to do it? No. They sat me down, all the supervisors were men, and said, do what she's doing. And so they just did it. How could they be more refined? How could they be better? So I asked the two, both dumbest and smartest questions I've ever asked in my life. First, I asked these women, did you have any hobbies? Never, ever. Ask a woman who grew up in the Depression, tending to mostly on farms, big families, helping raise her younger siblings, who during the war is still helping to raise those younger siblings and probably her own kids and cooking dinner and working. What do you mean by hobbies, Sonny? So I come back with this unbelievably brilliant rejoinder. What about in your free time? Don't do it. But I recovered. Did you sew? Yeah. Did you crochet? Yeah. Did you needlepoint? Yes. Did you knit? Yes. Now, this will end with this. So we can think about this. This is an agricultural community and a manufacturing community. It's two kinds of jobs you could get in this community. Either working as a farmer. Farmers can do everything. That's unbelievable. But it's all gross motor skills. The other manufacturing facilities, building washing machines, that sort of thing, gross motor skills. Very skilled men. But those women walked into that factory. And they were the best guitar makers Gibson has seen to this day. Now, I'm going to ask you, before you leave, at least hold these. If you play them. The one that's more beat up, I probably put it in 1,000 people's hands. My wife and I have a child refugee project sort of on hold right now. But anyway, I've taken this to refugee camps to give guitar lessons in Greece and leaned it up against a tree or a building and said, before you leave, touch this guitar. Because it helped to bring beauty to the world at our darkest time. It helped to liberate the world. And I've been able to put it in the hands of people who are experiencing something similar today. Thank you. I'll take questions. Questions? If you don't ask questions, I'll give you my answers anyway.
How many, is there just the one lady left?
Yeah, just the 103-year-old. She's still really healthy. I'm scheduled to be in Kalamazoo in September, late September, to screen the Michigan premiere of my little Kalamazoo Gals documentary. We won Best Short Documentary at the Social Justice Film Festival in Seattle. Very proud of that. Some other awards we've won, but it really is a story about social justice and guitar geekdom. Yeah, one left. Yes.
I have a question about the Kalamazoo guitars that were built by Gibson. Where they put Kalamazoo and Gibson guitars so they could sell them cheaper. Did they make some of those without truss rods?
Almost all of them.
So they,
Right.
that was a big left.
Right. So Gibson had a budget line introduced in the mid-1930s, early 1930s, because of the Depression, trying to make cheaper instruments that could still sell some instruments. And these did not have truss rods, a metal rod. They were simplified in the ornamentation. Some of them are still really great instruments. Also, Gibson built wooden toys, Kalamazoo playthings. I've given up. I used to scan eBay all the time trying to find one. But yeah, a lot of budget information. So the oldest woman I met, who was 97 when I met her, she had actually started at that time and had worked on some toys at one point. And she knew about the Kalamazoo models. Yeah, exactly. Sure.
Yeah, so I've seen you do presentations before.
And you still can.
And it keeps evolving as you learn more. Are you
Yeah.
continuing to investigate and discover more all the time? Or?
Yeah, so part of it is that I just make shit up. No, part of it is that I have learned a lot over time, right? I've learned a lot. I found another woman, this 104-year-old. She gave me more insight into how the factory worked, what jobs women could do and couldn't do. She stayed after war. Women lost those jobs. I've learned that. I've gotten this earliest guitar and found out that very first shipping number. So now I know when the guitar started. I've done even more investigation. I had a researcher go to the National Archives and get every World War II document that mentioned Gibson, 1,500 pages or so. Right? Once in a while I'll go back through there, and I've learned more. So I now know that metal restriction order went into effect June 1st, 1940, 3. So I can figure out the dates of guitars. So for instance, the bigger guitar here, I have one of the bigger guitars I have at home, it's called a factory order number, batch number. In that batch number, some of the guitars had truss rods, some didn't. So I know that's a pivotal or transitional period. Those guitars were started just before June 1st, 1943. Now, my partners, you know, the brilliant guy from Germany, great guitar maker and vintage historian, Willy Henkes, had mostly done all the dating of these guitars because he knows more about guitars than I. He had dated those in 1944. Clearly, it's a middle 1943 batch. So yeah, I continue to learn more. The guitars find me. Sometimes they'll come through dealers and I'll just negotiate a price. If they come from an individual, got my grandfather's guitar, I heard you like these things, would you like to buy it? This is what I do. I say, look, yeah, maybe, I would like to. This is how I'll do it. Have it appraised by one of the well-known vintage guitar appraisers. Both of them are in Nashville. And I'll either pay that or I won't pay anything. I don't want to be the person that gives you $500 for a $5,000 guitar or $25,000 guitar. You can sell it to somebody else for more or somebody else for less. I won't do it. I've had some people get it appraised, and I say, no, I don't want it to sell it to somebody else. I don't want to take advantage. But they come to me, and I learn from those guitars. It probably, at least twice a month, people reach out to me with photographs of their grandfather's guitar, their father's guitar, and I learn from those instruments. So yeah, it's continued. And it's been this extraordinary gift to me. It's taken me around the world. It's taken me to the presidential library. My mom said it had never happened, but it did. I met so many extraordinary people, and I continue to learn from it. Yeah, it's been this incredible gift. I get teared up every time I'm in Kalamazoo because I have this one remaining gal who's really my surrogate mother at this point. And it reminds me of this journey that I got. I got this window into a time period that I should have asked my parents about. But I didn't, because I figured if they'd experienced it, how cool could it be, right? And of course, it was really interesting. So I got a second chance at redemption from my own life story. So a lot of things escaped me, yeah.
John, did any of these women take pride in what they accomplished, or was it just a job?
Yeah, Mark, it was just a job. So the last surviving gal, Irene calls it, I thought it was a crummy job. I did ask every one of them, what was the proudest moment of being at Gibson? And it was always victory in World War II. I mean, it was just this shared sacrifice. You know, that Tom Brokaw, Greatest Generation, I didn't believe it. Until I met the Greatest Generation, I thought, yeah, we got nothing. I mean, one of my favorite stories of this is that the War Production Board shut down all these industries, including gold and silver mining, so that the technology and the labor force could go mine for tin, copper, whatever they're using in steel, using in the war. Shut down Singer sewing machine. One lawsuit, only one. Didn't get to the Supreme Court until after the war. Supreme Court said, well, you know, your sacrifice of having your mine closed is minimal compared to the sacrifice that people have made in fighting the war. You don't have a claim. So it was a generation that didn't complain. They didn't whine. They made sacrifice. So all these women, they were proudest of their role in keeping the family together and somehow helping the country defeat evil incarnate. Is there something else, Tim?
All flat tops, or arched?
So they made everything. So there are only about 9,100 flat tops, at least as many arch tops and banjos and stuff. So up total about 25,000 instruments. Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to have folks take the guitars out. So there'll be another talk coming shortly, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So we'll take the guitars outside. I'll be out there. I'm going to go sign books, but also bring the guitars. I want to say, even if you don't play guitar, just hold it. I used to think of these things as inanimate objects. No, they're repositories of cultural history. Please hold one of these guitars. Thank you.